Hello, thanks for joining us on today's webinar. It's 1 p.m. West African time. I want to say a big welcome to you from wherever you're joining us from. We are glad to have you here. My name is Ademola Victor, and I would be your moderator for today's webinar, where we'll be discussing continuous integration and continuous development on AWS for startups. This webinar is being put together by Secure Intelligence Limited, and we are glad to have you here. Let's go on to the next slide so we see what we have in stock for us on today's webinar. It's important I mention that this webinar is being recorded and bits of it will be uploaded on our social media handles. We also want to encourage and mention that attendees can raise their hands, can react during the presentations, or make other engagements as required by the facilitator. If you have any question, please endeavor to use the Q&A comment session during the session, and we will have them answered. If you have questions during the course of the webinar, feel free to drop them. There would also be a time where you would be encouraged to ask questions after the facilitator has taken us through his presentation for the day. Next slide, please. Just a quick introduction about Secure Intelligence Limited. SEAL teams are solution builders. We apply technology to drive effectiveness, agility, and growth for businesses. We are positioned to help enterprises scale globally. In today's world of global village and technology becoming the major factor, the major joining factor across various industries, Secure Intelligence team is positioned to help you scale in that global arena. There are values we work by, and there are tools which we implement to help you realize, to help you achieve this goal. Global mindset, the multi-class competence, agility, growth, and a couple of others are the various working tools that we put together to help you achieve these goals and many more. Next slide, please. Without wasting much of our time, I would want to humbly welcome our facilitator for today, a renowned practitioner in the matters of AWS tech, cloud engineering, and around the environment of data engineering. Good afternoon, John Toriola. Please confirm if you can hear me. I'm not sure I can hear you, John. Can you hear me?
Okay, hi, Victor. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Engineer John is in the building. So I'll just pass the mic over to you, John, for an insightful session.
Okay, thank you so much, Victor. You are welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar, and we are actually hoping you'll be learning a lot from us today. Today, we'll be talking about CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment in general, and how you set up CI/CD on AWS, basically. And I will actually be showing you one or two, like I will show you some of the services that are actually the service you find on AWS that are related to CI/CD. So I'll walk you through a very simple demo to see how these whole thing actually play together. So our agenda for today will be, okay, the first thing, so please, the previous slide. Like the agenda page. Yeah, thank you so much. Now we'll talk about CI/CD. Like, I'll give you a very good rundown of what it is, an explanation of CI/CD in general. Then the second thing on our agenda will be some services on AWS that you can use to run your CI/CD pipelines. And the third thing will be, we'll just walk through a very short demo. and that will be all. Okay, so what is CI/CD? Let me start by, okay, by the end of this webinar, we're hopeful you will acquire a very solid understanding of CI/CD, learn how the tools, the different tools of AWS has to offer as regards continuous integration and continuous deployment. And you'll be learning a lot, because even with the demo, I will show you one or two things, like things that you will not easily see on probably other webinars. So the demo will actually drive home some of the points I will be discussing theoretically. Okay, so what's CI/CD? If you've been coding for some time now, you would have come across CI/CD definitely. Like, okay, you would know by now that companies don't just create codes, like write codes and just put some servers together and deploy into the server and have it go live. Things don't go that route again. So everything now goes through a pipeline. You get, so you want to continuously integrate and you want to continuously deploy your code. Basically, majorly because of the agile lifestyle and agile workspaces we have today. You don't want to build it still goes with a monolith code basically, but you don't want to wait after 3-4 months when you are done writing your code, then you start working on deployment and all the likes. You want everything to be done in a rapid succession. You get, the developers write their code today, the project managers vet and test the code, then you push the code immediately, probably to a test environment. Then from the test environment, you are pushing directly to production. Once that is done, you go on the circle again. You go through code. You want to put together a new feature. You deploy the feature to test environments, to prod environments immediately. Like, everything is done rapidly, in rapid succession. You are not waiting. So that's how code in this present time is actually being developed. You are not waiting. So what is continuous integration? Continuous integration is actually how you bring together codes written by different developers at different points in time, living in probably different regions of the world. You want to merge everything together into one repo. So that's what CI is. You want to continuously integrate your code. Somebody in US is working on the navbar, and another person in Australia is probably working on the footer you get of your web app. Another person in somewhere in Africa is designing the buttons. You get, everything is coming together into the repository at the same time, and you want everything to be integrated perfectly. That's what continuous integration is. Everybody is doing their own thing, but the code is being integrated on the fly. You are not waiting. You are not waiting for 2-3 months down the line to do that. You are doing it on the fly. You are doing it on the go. That's what CI is. Now, what is continuous deployment? Like, okay, now once the code is ready, you want to continuously deploy your code. Now gone are the days where it still happens in some organizations though, but majorly most organizations have actually gone off the paradigm where the developers write the code and they have to wait for several, probably then the operations guys have to wait for the code to be fully integrated before they can do something on their own end. No, those days are gone. Now you used to have a systems an operations guy, then a developer, but now you have what you call sysops. Both the developers and the operations guys are actually working in tandem. Most times, even the developer is actually the sysops guy. You get, so that's what continuous deployment actually brings to the table. You want to immediately integrate your code, and also, like, you want to deploy the code on the fly. Like, now you are deploying to different environments. Like, you first deploy to probably a dev server to check out what the code is doing. Okay, it seems we need to test one or two things. Probably want to test for software integrations. You want to test your dependencies. You want to do those things in your test environment. Once that is done, you want to deploy directly to production. Now everything that's what CI/CD is all about basically. The fact that you can quickly integrate your code and get things working in deployment. That's the beauty of CI/CD. Now let's go to the next slide. Okay, so some of the services that AWS has now, if you've been in the development in the programming world for a while now, you would have heard about SQL CI, you'd have heard about Jenkins, you'd have heard about GitHub webhooks and the likes. Those all those different platforms are also offer continuous integration and continuous deployment. They offer things you can use for CI/CD. But basically, today's teaching will actually be concentrating and be putting our attention on AWS. How can you do CI/CD with AWS? That's what we want to do. How can you continuously integrate your code and continuously deploy it to servers with AWS? So these are some of the services that AWS has that you can use for CI/CD. The first one I'll be talking about is the code pipeline. Now, as the name implies, it's the pipeline. It's used to set up the pipeline that your code will be running in. Now, when you have a pipeline, you want to have stages in your pipeline. Now, you want to have the commit stage when the code gets committed. Now, you want to have something like the build stage. You want to have something like the probably you want to have something like the test stage. You want to have approval stage or several approval stages where you are not just deploying codes. You have cloud engineers, you have product managers that are approving the code before it goes to probably the different set of environments. So how do you set this whole thing up? You use what AWS calls code pipeline. All your stages can actually be in a pipeline. It's simpler that way. Now apart from code pipeline, we have what we call code commits. Now code commit is like a counterpart to something like GitHub or Bitbucket. Now that's what code commit is, but it's much more. It's an AWS managed service. You can, if you have your resources and your infrastructure or your workload on AWS, instead of leveraging, instead of going outside of the cloud, you can just go ahead and have your codes committed into code commit. It's actually very simple to set up, like every other AWS service. It's very, very simple. Now, that code commit is a counterpart to something that looks like it's just basically a Git repo. That's what it is. Now, code build. Now, I explained earlier that you want to build your code. That's what you use code build for. Let's assume you wrote your code in Java, and you can't just push Java codes to production. You have to build the code and get a working version of the code. That's what you use code build for. If you have something, if your code is written in probably with React, you want to run an npm build to build the file, to get your index file and everything. That's what you use code build for. You use it to run different commands. Now, code deploy. Code deploy is is a resource on AWS that helps you streamline the process of deploying your code to different environments. Now, let's assume you have EC2 instances set up on AWS, and you want to easily deploy your code into a set of EC2 instances, probably in an auto-scaling group behind a load balancer. You can easily use code deploy to do that. That's the beauty of code deploy. You can also use code deploy to deploy codes to your on-premise servers. Now, code artifacts. Now, code artifacts are basically, if you've worked with other CI/CD platforms, you know what artifacts are. Artifacts are the different stages, your code, like the data from different stages of your code. Now, when you build your code, you have to store the code somewhere for the next stage to pick it up. So that's what an artifact is. And code artifact helps you manage that. Now, lastly, CodeStar is a beautiful service that helps you manage every other thing with little input from your end. Now, let's assume you don't want to go in depth with learning about each and every one of these services. You just want to get it working, like you just want to deploy your code and get it working like very fast. That's what you use CodeStar for. CodeStar helps you integrate every other service we've mentioned and gives you a working version of your code in a very fast pace. Okay, now let's go to the next slide. Next slide. Hello, the next slide, please. Can everyone hear me? Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Okay. Now this is just I will be explaining more things here just to point out how this whole thing actually relates to each other. I've explained some of the services already. I've explained code commit, code deploy, code build, code artifact. Now let me quickly touch on what a bit spec file is. Now, when you talk about a bit spec file is what your code build actually uses to that's where you put your commands that the code build runs on. Now, let's assume you want to you've written a React application, and definitely you have to build the code to get your build file or your build folder. Now, what you do in the regular sense of things is to run npm build on your code to generate it. Apart from npm build, you also want to run probably npm install and an npm build, majorly npm build, to build your code. Now, where will you put that the set of commands you want to run to build your code? Now, in code build, you put those commands in what you call a build spec file. Now, for those of us that have interacted with AWS a little bit, you would have heard about build spec files. So where you put your code, the codes, like the commands you want to run on your code, where you put them is in your build spec file. Now, let's assume the particular build stage is probably a test stage. Now, you want to run some commands to test to run test on your code. Now, where you put those commands is also in a build spec file. Now, when we run through the demo, I will show you an example of a build spec file, and you will see what it's very, very simple file. It's a very simple YAML file. You will see an example of it to have an idea of what it is. Now, another thing is an app spec file. Now, in today's demo, we won't be touching on app spec files, but what app spec files does is, like the build spec file, that's what your code deploy uses to as commands. Like that's where it gets its commands for to deploy your code properly. Now, let's assume you want to deploy your code into a Lambda function or an Elastic Beanstalk environment. Now, it's in the app spec file you specify these things for code deploy to know where to deploy the code. Okay, it's almost like something like the build spec file, but the build spec is used with code deploy, while app spec file is used with build spec is used with code build, while the app spec file is used with code deploy. Now, another thing, I've explained what artifacts are. Now, another thing I want us to actually look at, because we'll be using that in today's demo, is what you call IAC, infrastructure as code. Now, when you are writing code, when you are trying to work with AWS, you don't want to go to the console and start clicking away, creating the pipeline. You don't want to do that. You can do that. AWS allows you to do that. But as a developer, you want to actually go the programming route, the code route, instead of doing things on the console. The reason being that now when you have a file that you've written all the steps you want to take, all the resources you want to build, when you have a file that has something like that, you can easily deploy that file into several AWS accounts. Or if your organization is trying to run a multi-region infrastructure, you can deploy it into different regions. Let's assume you okay. Apart from that, even code pipeline can also deploy your code into several regions. But what IAC offers you is that your code is now deployable into several regions, into several accounts. You can put in something like parameters to differentiate accounts and to differentiate regions. So what we'll be doing today is, instead of walking us through the console, and we are creating code pipeline with the console, creating code build with the console. We won't be doing that. We want to do something more something more native to AWS. We want to use CloudFormation. Now, apart from CloudFormation, if you've worked with Terraform, you can also use Terraform. So it's not compulsory you stick with CloudFormation, but to manage things in-house in AWS cloud, it's actually advisable to use CloudFormation if you understand how it works, basically. So that'll be all with this particular slide. Now let's go to the next slide. Okay, now most of the things you'll be seeing here, I've explained them already, but just to buttress my point, now when I was explaining code pipeline, I pointed out the fact that you have several stages in the pipeline. You have the first stage in the pipeline is the commit stage, which is at the lowest part of the ladder there. You commit your code first. You are committing to a repo, either GitHub or code commit or Bitbucket, any repository of your choice. But in this in the demo we'll be running today, we'll be using code commit. You can also your pipeline can also be triggered by either when you drop an object into an S3 bucket. You can trigger your pipeline with anything, but we'll be doing our trigger with code commit. Now, once you commit your code, the next thing you want to do is to build your code, and that leads us to code build. You use code build. The short description there says this combined stage, like that's the build stage and the test stage, involves transforming the source code into a runnable application build and running various tests to ensure its functionality and quality. Basically, that's what the code build does. And code build uses the build spec file to run those commands. Now, the next stage is the approval stage. You want to approve your stage before you want to approve your code before you push to production. Now, your developers have written lines of code, probably a new feature to your application. You don't just want to deploy the application directly. You want to test the application. You want to build the application, then test the application. But before pushing to production, you want to make sure there is somebody that will approve the code before it goes to production. So that's where the approval stage comes in. And the AWS service that you use to set up approval stages is a simple notification service. You can use that, AWS SNS. You can use that to set up approval. Very simple. It's easy to use. Now, one of the beauty of having most of these resources on AWS, like using AWS resources for these things, is because of the ease with which you can actually make them interact with each other. It's very, very simple. Like having your repo in code commit, integrates easily with code build, integrates easily with SNS and every other resource you get. But yeah, GitHub also can give you the same feel, but it's the integration. The integration is easy to set up, but imagine when you have something on AWS that you can easily set up to work with other services. Now, you can use SNS, simple notification, AWS simple notification service for the approval stage. Now, for your code deploy, to deploy your code, now, in this particular webinar today, we will be deploying our code to an S3 bucket, because what we'll be creating is just a very simple static index.html file. So we don't need code deploy. We can do that. We can actually deploy our code to an EC2 instance that has probably an HTTPD server running somewhere in the instance. But that will actually be complicating a lot, because we are trying to simplify most of these things so you'll be able to understand how to set them up yourself. Now, we'll be using S3. We'll be deploying our code to S3. So that will actually simplify, it will help us simplify the process instead of going through code deploy and trying to set up AppSync. It's easy to do. It's just that what we are trying to do is a static website. So we can easily use S3 to do that. Okay, that will be that about the pipeline stages. The next slide, please. Now, this is the architectural diagram we will follow. We will deploy our code. Sorry, we will commit our code to a repo on code commit. Then code commit triggers the next stage of the pipeline, which is code build. So we'll build our code with that stage of the pipeline. Then the next stage will be to test the code. So once we test the code, then once the code is okay, now I didn't put an approval stage because it's still in the interest of streamlining and trying to make things easy. That's why I actually took that off. So we'll just deploy from the test stage directly to our development server, which in this instance will be our S3 bucket. So that's how code commits. Now, if you check on that, there's a bucket underneath the diagram, the architectural diagram, and that's our artifact bucket. Now it's in this bucket that all the stages will get their artifacts from. Now the code commit is the first stage. It's the one that drops the code into the artifact bucket. Build stage will pick up the code from the artifact bucket and try to build the code. Then it passes it to the test stage and so on like that. So the artifact bucket is like a resource layer that you actually put the stages, the file from the different stages of your code. Okay, hope that's clear. Okay, now let's quickly run our demo. Okay, I'll be sharing my screen soon and like to know if you can.
Just before we go into the demo,
Okay.
I would want to tell our participants today that the team has put together a free consultation call for the purpose of engaging experts on this subject better. Moving ahead, so John is talking about continuous integration and deployment, and you might be wondering how you want to get a grasp of all of this. Not to worry, just take a deep breath. Before the end of this call, we would be sharing a link for you to schedule a moment with our consultants, and you'd ask questions and they will talk you through a host of these subjects. Not to worry. I just wanted to mention that. Now we can go into the presentation, into the demo proper now, John.
Okay, thank you so much, Victor. So back to the demo. Can everyone see my screen now? Victor, I would appreciate if you can give me a response. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'm hopeful every other person can see my screen too. So this is our Sandbox account in Seal, and that's where I will actually be performing the demo. It's a very short one. I told you earlier that we will not be clicking and trying to create most of these things on the console. So I've prepared a template that I will show to us now. And I'll just quickly do a run through of what the template is about. Okay. All right. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen. So in the template, we have parameters in this is a simple cloud formation template, and we are using it to deploy some resources. And the first resource we'll be deploying is an artifact bucket, a simple S3 bucket. That's the artifact bucket that I showed you at the bottom of the architectural diagram, where each and every stage picks up the output from the previous stage. So that's we will be creating the artifact bucket and the website bucket, because we'll be deploying our code to an S3 bucket, and that bucket we want it to serve as a simple web application. So we'll be setting up, we'll create another bucket, and we will set up the bucket as to serve the index.html file, or to serve a website basically. So that's the second bucket. Like if you go back to, sorry, let me quickly show us those two things. Now, sorry, please, if you can just bring back the slides, like the architectural diagram page, just to show our viewers and our listeners what the two buckets I was referring to. Hello, Emeka, are you there?
Because you're sharing your screen, I can't share mine. So.
Oh, okay. So hopefully I might still come back to that, but let me just finish up with the let me finish up explaining the resources in our cloud function template. Now, the next thing we'll be creating is our website bucket policy. Now, what a bucket policy does is it shows how to interact with a particular bucket. Now, the fact that we want to set up our bucket to serve a website or to serve a file, an index.html file, to serve as a website, we have to make the bucket public, like so that everybody can view it. So that's where the website bucket policy comes in. We are making the bucket policies. So if you check the bucket policy, it's saying allow the principal is everybody to be able to get object from this bucket. So that's what we are doing there. So anybody that goes to the website can actually get the index.html file that will be deployed into the bucket. Now, the next resource I have here is the repository, which in this instance is our code commit. So this is the resource we are using to, this is how we create the code commit repo. Okay, the next resource is an SNS repo trigger. This is actually something that is needed, but not something we'll be using. Now, the next one is the pipeline rule. Now, in AWS, if you've interacted with AWS a little bit, you will know that now resources, even though AWS has all these resources and you created them in your account, that does not mean the resources can actually interact with one another. Like if you have an S3 bucket and you are trying to use code pipeline to put the artifact into the S3 bucket, it doesn't work automatically. You have to set up an IAM role. That is the role that will, okay, this role has the policy that states that anybody that assumes this role can put objects into this bucket. So you make services on AWS or resources on AWS to interact with one another through IAM rules. That's how you do that. So our pipeline rule is what we are using to set the interaction between those stages of our pipeline. Like it is the pipeline rule that makes the code commit to be able to drop objects into the S3 bucket. If there is no rule or if there's no policy that states that the pipeline, the code commit, also the pipeline can drop objects into the artifact bucket, it will not work. You won't be able to drop objects into the bucket. So it's the role that you should give those permissions and everything on AWS using IAM roles. So the next thing is the code build rule. Now, the code build also needs to do one or two things with your files. So like you want to use it to, let me show you the policy that the code build has here. You want to use it to drop things into your S3 buckets. So you are allowing, can you see the policy? You are allowing this code build or anybody that assumes this particular role to be able to do the following actions in the S3 bucket. What are the actions? You want them to be able to do anything with S3 and you want them to be able to do anything with logs. Now that's CloudWatch logs, which we can also check out once, hopefully you have enough time at the end of the presentation. I can just show you what CloudWatch logs are. And these are our build, our code build stages. Now, this is our build stage, or this is how we build our code. Now, if you remember, I said something about npm run build. Now, this is how you do that. You create a code build. Like instead of going to console to create a code build project, you just do it with. That's what we are doing with this particular resource. And we want more than one particular code build a project resource. So we have the test code, the build code, and the deploy code. So those are the three different code build project resource that we'll be creating. And lastly, we have our code pipeline. Now, it's in the code pipeline that we set up what the different stages. Now, if you check the code pipeline I have here, you have the code commit stage, and that is the first stage. Look at the run order. The run order is saying 1. So that's the first thing that will happen. So that's the first stage in our pipeline. Now, the second stage in our pipeline is the build stage. You want to build your pipeline. You want to build your code. You want to run different build commands on your code. That's the next stage here. And the third stage is our test stage. Now, once you build your code and your code seems to be okay, now you want to run some tests on your code. Probably things like lint test, SAS scan, you want to run XCA scan and the likes. It's in your test stage, you can put those things together. And lastly, we have a deploy stage, and it's with the deploy stage that we actually push our code into the S3 buckets, the website buckets that we created earlier. So that's all the resources we have set up in CloudFormation. Now let me quickly deploy the CloudFormation templates so you can see how this whole thing works with CloudFormation. Now I'll go to my search and type CloudFormation. So the service will come up. Okay. Oh, sorry. Let me just restart everything on my console. So as Victor said earlier, if you probably you want to do something like this for your startup or your company, and you are wondering how long it will take to teach your staff how to do these things, at AWS we actually have programs that we use to train your staff. Or if you want to actually employ our capability to help you set this whole thing up on our end, we can also do that. So you can just we'll be dropping a link by the end of this demo in the chat box where you can contact us to get any information you want on how to do these things. Okay, sandbox account. Now, things even outside of pipeline, CI/CD, probably you want to create resources on AWS. That's our proficiency. Just get our contact information and you can talk to us to help you do most of these things. Okay, so I will go to CloudFormation now. I mean, CloudFormation already because I recently visit CloudFormation, but let me show you in case you've not done something with it. So you just type in the search box and CloudFormation will come up. I'll be opening this in a new tab. Yeah. So I told you if you intend to use IAC, infrastructure as code, to deploy your resources, you can either use CloudFormation or Terraform or some other infrastructure as code resources out there. But majorly we use CloudFormation and Terraform. So I'll be deploying those resources that you saw in the templates just now. I'll be deploying them with CloudFormation now. So I'm about to create a stack. Now the template is ready. I will upload my file. My file is in this folder. This is the template. And there it is. So what CloudFormation does basically is to just help you set up your resources, like without you having to click the console to do the setup. So I have to name the stack. Let me just name it demo stack. And the project name, I will name it CI/CD demo. That will be my project name. And next. The next again. I acknowledge by ticking the box that I want to create some IAM roles. So I submit. Now CloudFormation starts its magic, starts creating the resources. So what I tried avoiding by going the CloudFormation route is going to the console and creating the resources one after the other, because that's not scalable. Now with that template you saw me analyze just now, I can actually do that in several accounts. But if you are clicking on the console, you have to go to the new account and do the same clicking again. So that's not scalable. So that's why I'm going the CloudFormation route. So let's just wait for CloudFormation to set up our resources so we can proceed and go ahead and check our pipeline. Hopefully everyone is getting what I've been explaining. As I said earlier, we can, if your organization wants to have something like this done, probably you have your resources, you have your web app, you have all those things, and you want to actually have CI/CD, you want to use CI/CD to get this thing rolling, you can contact us, because one of the benefits of using code pipeline, CI/CD on AWS is you can actually use it to deploy to several regions at a go. You can use code pipeline to deploy to several environments, and those environments can be on different AWS accounts. You get, so that's one of the reasons why it's better to set up CI/CD instead of just writing your code on the console or trying to do things other ways. Okay, our stack is ready. Now let's go ahead and check our pipeline, because we create one of the resources we have in our templates is the pipeline. So let me search for code pipeline. So let me open this. Okay, I think we are done with CloudFormation, but I will leave it there. So let's just go to the pipeline. So this is our pipeline will come now. Let's just wait a bit, let it load. Now, assuming we're trying to do it on the console directly, what we would have done is we would have come here, we would have clicked this button, create pipeline, and we'll start doing things on the console and start trying to, can you see pipeline name? So to avoid this, that's why we actually went the other route of using CloudFormation, because this is not scalable, obviously. If I want to deploy in another account or in another region, I can just go ahead, take the templates and deploy. But if you go to a different region, even in this same account, if you go to a different region, the pipeline will not be there again, and you have to start clicking again to do those things. So it's not advisable. So this is our pipeline, CI/CD demo pipeline. That's what the name of our pipeline. So now, can you see the pipeline is all? Look at the different stages, our build stage, our test stage, and our deploy stage. Good. Now, there's nothing, we've not run any code in the pipeline, and even our repository stage is actually failed because there is nothing in our repo. Now, let's check our repo out. Can you see all the list of resources that I explained earlier for CI/CD? They are on the left-hand side. Look at code commit at the top. Look at code artifacts, code build, and the likes. So I will actually be, because I want us to push things into our repo, so I'll be going to code commit. Now, I don't know. Let me be sure that everybody can hear me. Can everyone still hear me? Hopefully, I have not been talking to the room. Hello. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, let me continue then. We're almost done with the. So now we created a repo. If you remember, in our template, we actually created one of the resources we created in the template is a repository. So let's check it out, because that's where we will push our code, and code pipeline will have to figure out our code from, like, it will have to pick up our code from the repo. So this is our repo, CI/CD demo repo. So the way I did the naming of the resources is to attach CI/CD at the front of all the resources. Now, I use parameter to do that on the CloudFormation template. You can learn that from us, or you can go ahead and learn it yourself if you're interested. So this is our repo, CI/CD demo repo. As you can guess, the repo is empty. Now, assuming you are working with GitHub, somewhere when you are trying to create your GitHub repo, you'd have been asked to probably add a README file. Now, our repo is empty. We don't have a README file. So what we have to do is to start adding files to our repo. Now, we need some files for the repo to be able to deploy our code properly. Now, let me show you, because I told you that for code build to work properly, you need the build spec file. Now, the fact that we have 3 different, look, let me just show us in our templates. Now, we have 3 different code build projects. So that's why we have, look at, for this build code stage, we have to provide the build spec file that we named buildspec_build.yaml. Now, if you check by left-hand side, you see that I've already created those files. You get, now let me show you what the build spec underscore build YAML is. Now, can you see commands? Now, for this particular project, we're actually not running a build because it's a simple index file. Assuming I created I'm using a React project, then somewhere in this file, I would have added something like this, npm install and npm run build. You get, something like that would have been in this build file, but because we are not running any build, so that's why I just echoed out some strings. You get, it's that simple. Okay, let me say that again. So now for the test stage, the same thing. We are not testing anything. It's a simple index file. But for the deploy stage, we have something in our deploy stage. Now I echoed, this is a simple build spec file. Then I echoed something again. Now the next line, I'm running a command. I'm running an AWS S3 copy command. So I'm copying the index file into my bucket, the website bucket that we set up from the beginning. Now, as long as the index file is not present in the code commit repo, you will be seeing errors in our deploy stage. So let's start adding our build spec files into the repo. We'll see that the pipeline will get triggered. So now here's my repo. Let me add the first file. Let me upload the file. I can't upload multiple files at a time, so I have to upload them one after the other. So let's upload the build spec for the build stage. Let's upload this first. I have to supply, because I need to commit it. John Toriola, email address, john.toriola. Okay. And for my commit message, adding build spec file for the build stage. Let me copy this because I might need to use it again. Now let me commit the change. Now, if you check very well, our pipeline hasn't run at all. You get, the pipeline is just empty. Now, the fact that I just committed a file to the pipeline. Now, let's see the magic that will happen here now. Now, I can actually click release change. So the pipeline by itself will go to code commit to get the new change on the repo. But if you wait for some time, the pipeline by itself has a way it triggers itself to check for the commit. But I think we don't have time for that. So let me okay, thank God, it did that by. So now the pipeline, because we have committed code into the repo, now the repo stage has succeeded. Now another thing you will notice is the build stage also will succeed, because we are actually, it will definitely succeed because we are just echoing things out, nothing special there. We will check the logs, but it's nothing special. So the build stage will succeed, as I showed you earlier. The test stage also just echoes things, it will succeed. But the deploy stage has lines of code, and in the line, one of the things it needs in the line of code is the index file, which we have not added to the repo. So that will cause the deploy stage to fail. Now, I see that the build stage the build stage actually passed. Now let's check the logs. Let's check the log of the build stage. You see that those things we echoed in our build stage here. Let's see. Okay, running command echo. This is a simple build spec file. Can you see? So assuming we have added code commands to actually build our code, those commands would have actually been triggered here, and the command will be run here. You get that? It's that simple. So this same thing that is happening here will happen in the test stage too. But you will notice that now the test stage field. Okay, probably because I added. I think I changed those things. I removed them. Let me just see why it's failing. Okay. Now, the reason it's failing is the test stage. Let me show you. Let me show us here. The test stage actually requires, now like the build code. it requires the build spec underscore build.yaml, and that's what we committed just now. So the build code is okay. Now look at the test code. It requires a build spec underscore test file, which we haven't committed yet. So let's go ahead and commit that. You will see that the test stage also will now pass. But the pipeline will start from committing again. You start from the top again. Okay, so let me go to the repo and add another file. Okay, let's add a file. Upload file. So let me choose file. Now we'll be committing our build spec underscore test.yaml. Okay. This will be the test stage. The author name is John. Okay, let me commit the change. Now the test stage should pass definitely. Now let's just go one after the other. I don't want to rush any of these things because I want you to grasp what I'm trying to pass across. So let's go back to the pipeline. See, the pipeline will get triggered again. Now don't forget the test stage failed. So now I can release change, or I can wait for the pipeline to get the new commit by itself. But since we don't have time, let me release my changes. Definitely the commit stage will pass, will succeed. So you can see now, okay, we'll get there. Once I deploy the index.html file, then you now see the beauty of CI/CD, how you can just update your index file, or you update your code, all the stages, your test, everything will just run automatically. You don't need to try to start doing things again. Things will work because you've set it up in the pipeline already. Okay, now the build stage is running again. It will succeed also. Now the test stage also should succeed now because we have added the build spec underscore test file that it was requesting the other time. I should have just gone ahead to just start adding other things, but I just want us to take it one after the other so everybody will be able to learn one or two things. Now, instead of waiting, let's just go and add the other files. I want to take it in a progressive order so everybody will be able to see these things. And the build stage is actually delaying us now. Let me just reload. So most likely I've passed because it's just echoing out strings, nothing much. So as you can see, the build stage also passed. Now the test stage also should pass because in our test underscore build spec file, we're not doing anything special. We're not testing the code, we're just echoing out things. That's all, nothing special. So it should also pass because the file has been provided. I can reload, but it's supposed to pick it up itself. It's supposed to just do the right thing. So instead of wasting time, let me just reload. The test stage also is not doing anything special. It's just echoing out things. Now, assuming you are trying to use it, as I explained earlier, assuming you are trying to use it to run your workload or your infrastructure, you are supposed to actually have lines of code commands, different commands there. Now, the deploy stage will fail because it doesn't have the bit. Definitely sure. Because the deploy stage also requires that we provide the build spec underscore. Let me show us here. It requires that we provide the build spec underscore deploy. Now, if we provide this particular file, it will still fail again because inside okay, sorry, inside the deploy, bspec_deploy, it's expecting an index.html file, which we don't have yet. So let's add those two and get this whole thing running. So let's add both the index.html and the bspec_deploy.yaml file. Let's add those two now. But you can see how this whole thing actually works together. Like the integration is very, very seamless. bspec_deploy. So let me commit this. Now this for the deploy stage. Author is John. Now committing, I just added the deploy file, the bspec file for deploy stage. Now I will add the, mind you, the pipeline will get triggered again because we just committed something new. So let me add the index file also. So we just do everything together. We don't have to waste time. Then we'll go and check once we add the index file, we'll go ahead and check out our website. What is there? Okay, let me check. I think no. Let me just go with the one here. Index.html. This will be the index. Okay, no, I'm adding the index file now. Adding the index.html file. So, okay, no, the author name. So let me commit the change. Let's go back to our pipeline. The deploy stage failed again. So now, we created a bucket. Okay, those two commits will actually trigger the pipeline. And while we wait for the pipeline to do its thing, let's go to the S3 bucket we created, the website S3 bucket. Now, what the deploy stage is actually doing is it wants to copy the index file from the repo into the S3 bucket. Now, let's check out the S3 bucket. You will see that for now, the S3 bucket will be empty until the pipeline gets done with adding the index file. So CI CD. Now the artifact bucket already has things in it. Don't forget, because the pipeline has been using the artifact bucket. Let me just show us the artifact bucket already. It has been the different stages have been passing things along to each other. You can see, but I don't want us to waste time with that. So let me just show us the website bucket. Now it's empty because the codes have not been copied yet. Okay. Okay, I think it's passing the now. If you see the commit, now this is where I actually said the integration of different AWS resources actually makes things actually work like magic. Now, can you see that? I can actually see the line of commit that I'm working on now. Now, the adding the index.html file, that's the commit that just passed the build stage. So that commit has now been passed on to the test stage. If you check the stage, the last stage there is the bspec file, so that's why it's still failing. Now let's just be done with adding the index.html file, and let's see the magic that happens. I'm very sorry that the webinar is taking a little bit longer. It's I just want to pass the knowledge across properly. I don't want to rush things. Now, if I had gone the console route, that would have taken a longer time, because most of those resources that I created with CloudFormation, I would have started creating them one after the other, and that would take a lot of time. That's how to set up the. Let me just reload this page so things will be faster, because the test stage should have passed by now, and we just wait for the deploy stage. Now, everything that is needed, the index.html, all the bspec files, everything have been passed. So now we want to see the magic that AWS has to offer. Then we'll go and check our S3 buckets if the index file has actually been indeed copied over. So if you want this whole thing done, probably your organization, you guys want to learn how to do this, can contact us. We'll come around, we'll teach or train your staff. Or if you want us to also help you set it up from our end, we do that also. So just feel free to contact us at any time. I think in the chat box you will see a link that will direct you to how you can reach out to us. So just feel free to do that. We can do this and several other things. We are actually, and we are partners to AWS, so we can help you do literally everything you want to do on AWS. We can help you do those things. So this is just one of the things we can do. One of the many things. One of the many things we can do. If you want to set up probably an EMR, Lambda functions, you want to do literally anything. Now our deploy stage is good. Now the fact that the deploy stage has succeeded, that means our file has been successfully copied over to the S3 bucket. So let's go to the S3 buckets and let me reload now. Okay, I can just reload from here and see if our index file is now here. Good. Now we've set up this bucket to be public. If you remember, I said that earlier, and that means we have it set up as a website. So let's go ahead, click on properties, and go and check our website link. So let me just copy the link. I can click from here and do that, but let me copy the link and open a new page and copy this, and let's see what our website has up. Hello world. Good. That's what is in our index.html file. Now it's hello world that is there. Okay, now to see the beauty of CI/CD in total, let me just change the index.html file. Assuming we have enough time, I would have added pictures and all those things, but to just show you what this is all about, let me edit this and let's see what let me add some new things to the file. Hello world h2, you are welcome to today's webinar. Let me add a p tag. If you like to get more information about secure intelligence limited, you can follow the link in the chat box. Okay, so now I've edited the index. Now this is like you adding more features to your website, and just see the beauty of just pushing this and seeing it appear on the website literally immediately. Now let me commit this change now. Author John.Toriola. It's message updating the index.html file. Okay, let me commit the change and let's see. Now, once the code goes from the commit stage down to the deploy stage, then be rest assured that our website will have the new update. So this is the beauty of CI/CD basically, because you can easily get things rolling like this. Now you can, if with what I've displayed now, you can keep adding features to your website almost every day. If you have enough resources to do that, you can do that, because CI/CD simplifies everything. It simplifies everything in a big way. You don't need to remember the IP address of your build server. You don't need to remember the DNS name of your test server. You don't need all those things, because you've already set everything up already. That's the beauty of CI/CD. So let's just wait for the pipeline to finish running, and we'll reload our website and see what happens. So our build stage has passed, because we don't have anything we are building basically. Now, assuming your code base is actually huge and you have to actually perform build or test, it usually take longer. Sometimes we have some clients that we are working for that when we try to build their code, it takes about 30 minutes, sometimes 30 or over 30 minutes. It depends on the resources you're actually deploying or what you're doing at the particular time. So, and that is not your problem. You've already set everything up. Everything is just working in the pipeline, and you don't need to worry yourself again. You get? So the deploy stage. Now, assuming we are setting something up for production, majorly for production, I would have something like an approval stage somewhere between the test stage and the deploy stage. But because it's just a demo, basically, that's why we don't need the approval stage. And another thing is, you can have several stages in parallel. Like this test stage, you can have several test stages in this particular stage. You can have parallel stages. You can have something like that. You can have a test stage where you are testing for software composition, that's dependencies. You have another one, you are testing for SAST errors and all those stuff. You can have things like that. And you can have approval from more than one person before your code goes to production and the likes. So let's just wait for the deploy stage to finish up. Then we reload our page, we reload our website. I'm reloading the page, so we'll be sure if it's complete already, so we don't have to waste. Now our deploy stage is good. Now the fact that our deploy stage is green, that means our index.html has been updated. So let's now go back to our website and reload. Let's reload our website. You can see, hello world, you are welcome to today's webinar. If you like to get more information about Secure Intelligence Limited, you can follow the link in the chat box. Good. Beauty of CI/CD. Nothing is stressing you. What you do once, and just keep using the setup over and over and over again. That's the beauty of CI/CD. So thank you so much for joining me today. Now, there will be other information that my colleagues will be passing along to you. But this is what CI/CD is all about. There is more to it. Now, as I said earlier, if you want us to help you or train your staff on how to do these things, we can actually do that. So, but my colleague Victor will be taking over and he will explain more things to you about AWS, basically. Thanks for listening and joining the webinar today. Thank you so much. Okay, thanks. So I'll stop sharing now.
Well, thank you very much, John. That was quite an insightful session. Can we just use the chat session? Can we use the emojis to say big thank you to John? Very insightful. It's all went from all theoretical to practical, and boom, we saw how fast and how efficient it was to get this. One of the things I kept telling myself while John was running through the session with us was this is technology. This is technology, and one of the things you would all agree, all of us on the call, one of the things we would all agree to is the fact that this has saved time, it has saved manpower, and it didn't take John a lot of hardware usage. John was not carrying one computer to the other, wasn't plugging one wire or plugging one cable to a system and all of that. It was just him accessing the vast resources that is already existing on the internet already. So just like John has said, this is one of the services we offer in secure intelligence. One out of the many services we offer in secure intelligence. We build from scratch to top, and we get the system running. I can see the link to schedule calls to engage with our consultants is already in the call already, and please feel free to take advantage of that and get to learn about AWS and other services as you would want to inquire. Just before we go, I would love to hear your takeaway from today's webinar. So just drop your takeaway from today's webinar in the chat room. Please do. We would be reading. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. So I see some persons who has been on the call all along. Thank you very much for staying with us. I would love to read from you, Cecilia. I would love to read from you, Charity. I would love to read from Derek. I would love to read from Eric. I would love to read from Ishola. Just use the chat room and tell us what your takeaway is from this webinar. Gerard, Jonathan, John. So John, we have about 2 of your namesake on this call. There is John Awe and there is John D. Jean. I hope I got the name well. So please just use the chat room. Tell us your takeaway from today's webinar, even as we begin to route it all up. We apologize if this took more than the time you were expecting, but I believe it was worth your time because of the demo was hands-on and we got to learn a lot. While I'm reading, thank you very much for those who are sharing thoughts already. I'm reading through. Yes, I do agree with you. If you have questions also, feel free to drop. We would attend to your question in the shortest possible time that we have left. All right, thank you very much. Can I get the last slide where I do the closing remarks? Yes, Emmanuel, the video will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So just go on YouTube and search for Secure Intelligence Limited. You would have access to the video. And there is also going to be a follow-up email that will be shared with you, just like you got the invite. And it will be coming with the link to the video also. I believe I'm very correct on that. So just look out on your inbox and you would get that in a short moment after we end this call. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for being part of today's webinar. We would have another webinar roll out in the next couple of days, sometimes in the second week in November. Please keep an eye on that. One of the things we are set out to do in Secure Intelligence Limited is to bridge the knowledge gap in this part of the world and equip people with the right tools to become very good techies and position organizations for global success. Thank you very much once again. Enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your morning, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and have a good evening, depending on whichever part of the world you've joined us from today. See you in our next session. Bye for now.